We're so glad you've joined us on the ERLC podcast to explore how the Bible addresses important cultural issues pertaining to life, religious liberty, marriage and family, and human dignity, and how we can walk in wisdom for God's glory and for the flourishing of our neighbors. If you're enjoying this podcast and find it helpful, please leave a review wherever you listen. This will help more people find and benefit from what we're learning together. We are grateful for the time you take to join us for these conversations.
We're better together.
God is the one who's committed to his people growing through knowing him through his word. He's given us his word. And so he's as committed to Bible literacy in his people, if not, he's more committed to Bible literacy in his people than we are. And so he will work.
Hi, I'm Trillia Newbell, and I'm excited to announce our series, Better Together. The series captures our desire to partner together as men and women in the church and beyond to advance the kingdom with mutual support and care. Better Together will address a wide range of topics from sexual abuse, leadership, women in work, women's ministry, and so much more. Our goal is to inform and equip listeners on matters most important to women in the areas of church, home, and work.
Better together.
And I'm really excited to have my dear friend, Courtney Reissig, on the line. And she is the author of several books, one, Glory in the Ordinary, and she's working on a book on the Psalms, which I think is going to serve the church in helping us learn to not only lament, but I'm going to let actually Courtney tell you what that book is about. Courtney, thank you so much for being on the line.
Thanks for having me.
And tell us real quick, I know we're not talking about this Psalms book, but what is it about?
Sure, yeah. So in some ways it kind of ties into what we're going to talk about today because I care a lot about helping women understand the Bible and love the Bible. And so the Psalms are personally very meaningful to me in that they ministered to me during some significant trials in our family's life. And so I grew to love the Psalms and how the Psalms gave me language for my feelings. And so that's kind of what the book is about, is how the Psalms are not surprised by our feelings, but instead give us language for our feelings and how to process and heal and direct our prayers back to God when we're happy and when we're sad. So that's kind of the direction of the book. It's in, I'm writing it, so those things can always change, but
Right.
I'm in the process of writing it.
No, I love that you started off by saying that it is on topic because we are we're talking about training and equipping women, and your desire specifically, as you said, is to train and equip women to love the word, to love the scriptures. So let's start there. What are we talking about when we're talking about training and equipping? To some people, it might be all about Titus 2. To other people, it might be about seminary. But it sounds like you're thinking about Bible training. So tell us, what does it mean to you?
Well, sometimes Bible training can make people scared because they think of classroom setting type stuff. I have friends who, if you bring up training, they get a little nervous and anxious that they're going to have to go back to school. So we, in our church context, we're a church plant, we're small, and ours is primarily in providing a Bible study for women and giving them the tools for understanding the Bible themselves. So for me, in my context, I want women to not only be taught the Bible, which is excellent, but I want to create something that's sustainable so that if I'm not there anymore, which I won't be, I'll eventually die or move on. And so I want to create something where women have tools to understand the Bible for themselves. And so for myself in my own life, coming to understand the Bible myself has been so personally beneficial and beneficial to my relationships and my marriage and my walk with the Lord that I want that for other women as well. So that's kind of what I have in mind when I talk about training and equipping is simple, just giving women the tools to understand the Bible for themselves so that they are not intimidated by it and they grow to love it.
I love this for a number of reasons, but I'm going to ask you one of those kind of lame questions. Why is this important? Because I think that often when we do think about training and equipping, we go big. We think,
Sure.
yeah, and you're talking something that we do in our home and opening the Word and learning. So
Yeah.
why is this important for us to think in these terms as well?
Well, I think so. A lot of the times when we talk about training and equipping, we point to larger churches that are doing it really well, and larger churches that have resources at their disposal and multiple Bible studies meeting on multiple campuses, and that's great. The reality is that most churches in America and in the world are small, and so they don't have. I'm not paid on staff, and I don't know if I ever will be, not because it's not valued, just because we're a small church and it takes a lot of money to pay someone. And so I think it's important because most Christians are in contexts where they're not going to be in a large classroom setting at their local church or a large women's Bible study. And so I want to get to the everyday, ordinary people who we're ministering to. But I think it's also important, primarily important, because God has revealed himself to us in his word. And so if we are called by God and saved by God through Christ, then we should want to know God. And how are we going to know him except through knowing his word? So it's just basic discipleship and helping people grow in their sanctification is helping them understand the Bible so that they can grow to love the one who saved them.
No, that's so good. So what are ways that local churches can improve training and equipping of women? Because what you are talking about seems so simple, but yet I've heard the term biblical illiteracy. We see people maybe running to different resources and different things that may not be sound or helpful. So how actually can we do this? And specifically local churches, how can they improve training and equipping in this area?
Yeah, so I think it's a trickle-down effect. So if the word's not coming from the pulpit, then people aren't going to desire it. So what I often say to our women is that and I say to our pastors and elders, is that the love that our women have for Bible study is directly owing to the fact that they're getting fed on Sunday mornings and they want more. So it has to be a part of the church culture that you want the Bible and that you want to know God through his word. I think another way to implement it is that there can be maybe some fear over how pastors can help women, train women in the church, and so we don't often interact with one another. And so in my church context, I've known the primary preaching pastor longer than I've known my husband. So he and his wife were my first friends at seminary, and then they became friends with my husband after we got married. And so I've known him a long time, and he's not afraid of me, and the other elders in our church are not afraid of me. One of them is my husband, so glad he's not afraid of me.
Yeah.
But I think there's there is do you see the women in your church as being vital to the ministry of your church? And if you do, then you'll see their input with women as vital. So I think that starts in the seminary context of helping guys training for ministry to not be afraid of women, not be afraid of what they can contribute. But I think on a more simple front, we talk a lot about doing things organically in churches. Like we want these things to just like spring up. And I think that's helpful. We've tried that, and we found that organic doesn't always work.
Yeah.
It sounds really nice and really spontaneous and fun, but the reality is that all kinds of things can happen when you do things organically. So we are not overly programmatic, so we don't have a ton of programming, but we have very specific goals and very specific things in place. So in our church context, we have women's Bible study is the women's ministry thing we do in our church. We're small. We can't do a lot. So what's the most important thing? We have one Bible study. From that has grown other things. So then we did a women's retreat. We do that once a year. We do a women's retreat. And in our women's retreat, we have women in our local church teach at the women's retreat. And then we have systems in place to figure out how we can add other women to the teaching team. And so our goal in our women's ministry is kind of twofold. It's giving women the Bible and teaching and training and raising up other women to teach the Bible. And so we start with women's Bible study. You can identify women who maybe are gifted to teach just through the conversations that happen there. And then from that, we have women teach at our women's retreat. And then we have, Lord willing, eventually we'll have enough women who are gifted to teach the Bible in our church that we can then do like little mini seminars on Saturdays where we all get together and talk through a passage of Scripture together and help grow each other in our teaching skills. So that's real, like, nitty-gritty practical.
That's helpful.
But starting a Bible study is really simple. I mean, you can, if you want to help women grow in loving the Word and you want to train and equip women, then you can ask to start a Bible study in your church and pray that God brings people to come. But it has to start from the top. It has to be the pastors value the Word and are preaching the Word. They have to value the women in their church. And then from there, that will afford opportunities for growth.
No, that's helpful. It's very practical, pretty simple. But I've heard you say the word have to a couple of times. You said that the pastors have to desire this and the pastors have to preach it. What happens when you have a woman who desires it but isn't a part of a culture that actually equips women or has a desire for equipping women in the Bible? What do you do with that woman who has that desire but isn't seeing it in her local church? How do you encourage her?
Yeah, so this is, I'm going to, because I don't have firsthand experience in this, I'm going to I'm using football terminology and I don't really know what that means, but I'm going to punt it. I think this is the right thing you're supposed to do here. But I have I've talked with other women who've been in these contexts, and one of the things I've heard them say is you can always just invite people into your living room or to coffee and just start talking about teaching them the Bible or studying the Bible with them. Women, I have found, so not every woman who comes to our Bible study is super excited about Bible study, but most women want to get together, and so that's kind of in our context. Women really want to get together and talk and hang out. We have a lot of young moms, so going to Bible study is a night out for them. And so I think just starting with gathering women together to hang out and doing this small incremental, let's read through this together and talk about it, is where you can kind of see that's where the organic growth, I think, can happen in a structured setting where you have some degree of intentionality. And then also, this is so cliche and we say it all the time, but God is the one who's committed to his people growing through knowing him through his word. He's given us his word. And so he's as committed to Bible literacy in his people. If not, he's more committed to Bible literacy in his people than we are. And so he will work. We just don't know when he will. I mean, I went to seminary. I didn't finish seminary, but I started seminary, I want to say 12 years ago now, maybe 13 years ago. And I'm just now doing what I went to seminary to do. I mean, I had children all throughout there, so I was doing something else. But
you've been busy.
But I've been busy. Yeah, but it took a long. I mean, I wanted to do this for a long time, and I know women who've wanted to do it for twice as long, and have just been faithful in the little things that God opens doors for, and eventually, Lord willing, he'll bear fruit in the work. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. Well, what I wanted to make sure that the listeners hear is that you can still teach God's word if you're not surrounded by what you desire. In the midst of that, I'd say pray that your church would catch a vision for Bible study, Bible literacy, and then take a step of faith. So if that might mean you starting a Bible study in your home, but also approach your pastor about this. Try to give him a vision for it. Talk to him. And so I don't know if it's as I don't want to use the word more often than not, but I do think that often people just don't take steps of faith to actually
Yes.
present their idea to their leadership team. And then to take another step of faith of actually inviting people. So I would just encourage the woman who doesn't see it happening in her church. And I would say another thing, there's probably more people with that desire than you'd think. And
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. And so what do you think about that, Courtney?
Oh, I think absolutely. So I am often struck by how not alone I actually am when I actually talk about how alone I feel, right? I mean, so this is the case for everything. And so you would be surprised. Most people always know what I'm thinking. It just kind of all comes out. And so I am often surprised by, oh, they were feeling that too, or they thought that too, or they wanted that too. And I just didn't know because I didn't either ask or I didn't try and so the beauty of being human is that there is nothing that we experience that is not common to someone else. And so there are probably people in your church who want the same thing. And another thing I was thinking too, I heard someone say this a while ago, is that sometimes it takes you going to the pastors or the elders in your church, and maybe they want it and they don't even realize it.
Yes.
You know, pastors are so overworked, and so that depending on the size of your congregation, there's a lot of people they've got to keep up with, and they can't be all things to all people. And so it would be, in some church contexts, an incredible blessing to your pastor for you to go and say, can I do this? Is this okay? And so I just think, I know there are church contexts where the pastor's domineering. That's a different story. But there's as many varied circumstances where prayer, wisdom, and some intentionality can sometimes go a long way.
No, you're exactly right. I'm just going to repeat a line. I wrote it down that you said because I just think it's incredibly encouraging that we consider this. I'm often struck by how not alone I actually am when I talk about how alone I feel. And I think, I'm like, yes, it's so true, Courtney.
Yeah.
And so in this.
But everything.
I had several different lists of things that I think, man, if we would just speak up, if I would just speak up, I would probably have a lot more support and encouragement than, this is cliche, but it's also true. Nothing new under the sun. We say it all the time, but it's true. And so for the woman who desires training and equipping and biblical literacy and understanding and getting in the word with other women, there's probably someone, and it may just be one person. It may not be that you are in a auditorium filled with hundreds of women. It may just be one person. And it's encouraging just to sit down and open the word together. I've experienced that even last semester. I did a small Bible study. It was just a small number of us. And every time I opened the word, I left so encouraged by what God was revealing to each and every one of us through his word and how he was using a broken vessel, jars of clay, whatever you want to call it, a weak person to teach. And so we've been talking a lot about the local church, and that is your context. That is your heartbeat. But yet you do serve beyond the local church, and you did attend seminary, though you didn't complete it. What about beyond the local church? Have you thought about how can women be equipped beyond the local church?
Yeah, I think that there's obviously, the local church is my heartbeat. It's the drum that I'll beat forever. But I think that there are contexts where we are discipled and trained by not the local church. So I think really practically in my church context, women in our church are not going to go to seminary, and they're not going to be able to go to a training workshop where they're going to learn how to study the Bible. But that's where like books and resources and podcasts, and even there's like, you can listen to seminary classes on podcasts, like RTS does it. That's where those types of non-local church resources are so incredibly helpful, because we're one church with 80 members and 40 small children. And so we're not be able to create the type of content and resources that's going to give our people the theological and biblical insight and training that they need. And so we need people writing books. We need people doing podcasts. I mean, I listen to Nancy Guthrie's Help Me Teach the Bible the day it goes up, whenever she has a new one. Knowing Faith Through the Village Church is really helpful in tackling things that, like theological and biblical truths. RTS, I mentioned, you can listen to some of their classes online. And I know people who have gotten basically an entire seminary education for free by listening to those courses. And so that is it's necessary. So the local church is where the Bible talks about being the pillar and buttress of truth. It's where God's glory is displayed and where God's people are trained and equipped and go out. But in the internet age and in the age of where we can get printed resources to us, we need those, and we need people creating them so that the people in our congregations can have them and then grow and then go out and serve in whatever context God has them in. So there's a tremendous need for those things. I don't think they're unnecessary. One of the hard things, I know you do this as well, we both teach at churches. We go teach at women's retreats and conferences. And I'm incredibly thankful for those opportunities. I like meeting women in churches all across the country. But what I want to say in some of those places, and I do say when I have the opportunity, is there's probably women here who can do this as well. Mm-hmm. And what a blessing it would be to train them and equip them to do it. And some of those churches do. And there's a place for bringing in an outside speaker, absolutely. The church I just spoke at in November, they have a whole host of women who teach all throughout the year, and then they do like one thing, and they have a woman come in. I think that's great. But I think there's a place for both. But I think if we can use the resources out there to equip the women in our churches, I think that would be, in my opinion, preferable.
No, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where ministry happens mainly, or is in the local context. Yeah.
Yeah, but using the resources. So I'm a writer, and so I would never say that we only do this in local church and we don't read books anywhere else or anything like that, because the church is local, but it's also global.
Absolutely.
And so we need to be hearing from our brothers and sisters all throughout the world.
Well, and not just hearing. I mean, we just have such access to these things. And so and as we're reading the word, and we're talking again about training and equipping, as we're equipping ourselves to teach and to just live, then it's good to know that there are so many things out there. You've named different podcasts and different seminary classes that are free that you can look online. And we have such access to so many different things. So we have seminaries and podcasts, and you've named several, and it's encouraging. It's encouraging to know that as we are training and equipping ourselves and training and equipping our women, that we have access to so many different tools. So because for some women, most women probably, they're not going to be able to relocate to go to Midwestern Seminary, even though we'd love to. We'd love to have everyone there, or we'd love to have everyone at Southern, or we'd love to go to Southeastern, but we can't all relocate. And there are online classes, but even still, the time to do that.
Time and finances.
Yeah, time and finances are limited. And so it's good to know that these resources are available for free, and we can call it continuing education. Help us continue our education. And so the series is called Better Together. How might men and women partner together for training and equipping, specifically in the local church, and the focus that we've been thinking through today?
Yeah, so this is something I've been mulling over, especially in a smaller church context where you can't pay someone to do in our church, we couldn't pay someone to be a women's ministry director or something like that. One of the things that I've been so helped by is feeling heard. And not just by my husband, but by the other elders as well, is that I feel heard and equipped. And so our elders will often say, if you need resources, let us know and we will purchase them, or the church will pay you back. That's huge, to be able to buy resources to be better equipped to teach a Bible study to the women in your church. So, and one of the things we just did in our church budget is we allocated discipleship funds. So the elders, and when they meet with someone for discipleship purposes, they have discretionary money to meet with them, like whether they do coffee or something. But we had nothing for women. And so what ended up happening was the men in our church are able to meet with other men in our church for discipleship purposes, and that cost is covered. And in our church, we didn't have that for what if Courtney's meeting with someone for discipleship purposes or things like that. And so that seems really small, but it's incredibly helpful when you feel heard and you feel valued and you feel like the work that you're doing with the women in your church is important when you have just that discretionary funds to help. I think so. Being heard. I think also believing that discipleship and training of women is important. When you think of churches, over half of our churches are filled with women because there's more single women in churches than men. And so to neglect to care about, and it's not, I don't think it's malicious.
Yes, sure.
It's just unintentional. And so to see women who are rising up as gifted to teach and to lead, to encourage them, to say to them that you see that gifting, and then to then provide them with resources to do that, whether it's through funds for books, whether it's through sending them to a conference, whether it's checking in with them and seeing how things are going. Like one of our pastors is so incredibly helpful in helping me talk through curriculum and things like that. And to feel like you have a theological outlet where you can get that help is so incredibly helpful. And it's simple. It doesn't require programming. It doesn't require a whole lot of anything. I think also, though, is recognizing that shepherding people is going to include having a woman who can do that, because there's just things that women deal with that they need another woman to come alongside them.
No, I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
It's so important. I mean, you're probably going to talk about some of these with the people you interview, but there's just a whole host of issues that women deal with that a pastor is neither equipped nor should he be equipped to help. He should have a woman who he can identify, and more than one if he can, of, hey, can you talk with them? Can you reach out to them? Because I think that's part of shepherding. I think part of shepherding is delegating and recognizing who your key leaders are who can help you in your task of shepherding God's people. So in our church, it just looks like providing resources, funds for resources, recognizing the ministry is important, and then listening is huge.
And there, again, I've used the word simple several times. It's just simple steps. It's not hard to identify leaders and to try to find trusted people who you can help to come alongside you in ministry, which we see so much in the New Testament.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
I think the same thought.
Yes. Well, look at that. We've done that a couple of times. So
yeah.
We are friends. But anyway, so
we are, yeah.
But yeah, so I think these are really simple steps that we can take. How can this is our last question. How can we give and encourage gospel hope in this conversation and working together for the pastor who's failed in this area or who's maybe even abused his power, to the woman who's discouraged and maybe she's become bitter? What is some gospel hope to end us on?
I'm really glad you asked that, because as I was talking, as you were just talking, I was thinking, I wanted to add this, and I think this falls within that, is I think it's really important to remember that you and the pastors in your church are going to fumble over this a lot. And so you are going to be misunderstood, and you're going to misunderstand them, and you're going to feel, even in the best church context, like nobody cares about you. They don't care about the women. They don't care about what's going on. Sometimes that's real. Sometimes it's perceived and it's not real. It's just imagination in your head. It can be both. But all of this is owing to the reality of living in a broken world. And so we can talk all day long about vision for things, but at the end of the day, we live in a post-Genesis 3 world, which affects everything. And so much of our disappointment and struggle and strife and bitterness and domineering behavior is owing to the fact that Adam and Eve ate the fruit and plunged us all into rebellion. That's the problem. And that's why we feel angst when it's hard, and why it is hard to begin with. And so the glimmers of hope that we get when things go well, and when things are firing on all cylinders and we feel heard and understood, that's happening because Christ is redeeming all things and will one day make all things new. But it's just a glimpse of what's going to happen. It's not the final outcome. And so we are living in this tension of already but not yet. We've been saved and we're being saved, and we will one day be made new completely. But until then, we're going to have really good days and really bad days. And that is something that personally I've had to come to terms with a lot in the last 3 or 4 years, and has helped me in applying it to everything else around me, because I often feel this tension of, I know how it's supposed to be, but I'm not feeling how it's supposed to be. My life is not playing out how it's supposed to be. Well, that's because I don't live in the new creation yet. And so that is so important to hold on to in everything. And so if you apply it to church ministry, that's really important to hold on to in church ministry, because we wrong each other because we are sinners who live in a broken world. And when we do right by each other, it's because Christ has saved us and is making all things new by the blood of the cross. And so that's what we have to remember. So when things go well, we can't take the credit. It's not us. And when things go bad, it's because we live in a broken world and we're sinful. That's the only hope I have to offer.
No, that's so good.
That this is not all there is. And we're kind of inching our way to glory, and one day it'll all be right. But until then, it's not.
And as we're longing and waiting for that new creation, we work together. We strive towards unity in this area. So I think it does bring hope. You're right. We're broken. We're fallen, but there's hope because of the cross.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to wrong, but we look towards that future when everything will be made new and things will be right. And until then, we pursue godliness and love of neighbor. And work together. And so thank you so much, Courtney. I'm grateful for you. And I think this is going to be encouraging.
I'm thankful for you.
All right.
I'm excited. I'm excited to hear all the other interviews.
Oh, thanks. I hope it becomes one of your listening rotations that you listen to. Well, you have been listening to the ERLC podcast, and I'm Trillia Newbell. We will look forward to joining you next time.